Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable interactive pumpkin patch card with pumpkins that you can actually pick out of the patch. I'll show you how to do that at the end of the video. And we are going to use some products from MFT Stamps' new August release. We're going to use the Slimline Die Starter set. That's what I use to cut out this panel here for a slimline sized card. We are going to use the Autumn Blessing stamp and die set. That is the set that I use to make the little pumpkins and all the little leafy decorations for our scene. And finally, we're going to use the Grassly Hills Slimline die from MFT Stamps as well to make our little pumpkin patch. And so let's talk a little bit about what we're doing here. So I'm just inking on the background of the card using my Distress Oxide inks. I use some chipped sapphire and some tumbled glass for the sky. I'm not coloring the bottom because that is going to be obscured by our little pumpkin patch dies that we'll add in a second. I'm adding some liquid stardust from Lawn Fawn here, just sprinkling it on the back of the card. I just love adding sparkle to my autumn cards, even though this will be a daytime scene card. I just love that little sparkle. It's like the magic of fall in the air. Now, these are the 3 die pieces that I cut out using the Slimline Grassly Hills die set. So there are 3 different grassy shapes, and I used all 3, and we're going to layer them together to make a great pumpkin patch scene. I'm using some mustard seed for the top part of the grass to make it look like the grass is kind of, dying, or maybe there's a little bit of hay in there since it's a pumpkin patch. And our seasons are changing, so our grass is going to be kind of withering away this time of year. And then this is forest moss, is the green on the bottom. And yeah, I think those are the only 2 colors that I'm using here. And then I'm just going to kind of work until I get a look that looks good to me. Maybe I use 3 different colors here. I know what I did. I used Mowed Lawn for the mid shade green, and then the forest moss is this darker green that I'm using on the bottom, and then the mustard seed is the yellowish hay color that's at the top of the grass. So I'm just going to work a little. Then I realized my bottom piece of grass there was a little dark, so I'm just going to darken up the other edges as well, and so that I don't get fingerprints in my die cuts, I'm just using that little piece of scratch paper to kind of hold on to the die pieces as I ink them up. And sometimes I forget and just put my finger on the bare die cut, which makes my fingers pretty dirty, so I had to wash them off right about now. Just going to clean up my mat, and now we are going to spray our die cut pieces as well with some water just to give a nice speckled look to the grass so it matches the sky. And then I'm going to get out my liquid stardust again, and I'm just going to spatter a little bit of it over top of these little grassy hills here. I'm just using a regular paintbrush, and I just squeeze a drop of the liquid stardust onto an acrylic block. It's off screen, you can't see it, but that's how I do it. You can either apply the liquid stardust just as it is, or you can add a little water as well. Now we're going to move on to coloring our images. We're going to do no line coloring here, which is really, really fun. And I'm using jellyfish ink from Lawn Fawn, which is a great dye ink to use if you want to try some no line coloring. It's a little different from just using Memento black ink, and I will show you the trick for how to get beautiful no line colored images. And the paper I'm using is Express It Blending Card, as always, my favorite paper to use for Copic coloring. And I'm just gonna attach my little panel down to my workspace so that the images don't move around while I'm coloring, so it's a little easier for you to follow. Now, I always like to start by adding in my highlight color, so I'm going to use a little Y11 and just add that to the centers of the pumpkin so I remember to leave a little bit of that area light. Sometimes I will let my highlight be white. Sometimes I like it to be a little bit of a lighter shade than the shade that I'm working with to color the rest of the image. It just depends. But I do find if I mark it off or block it out first, then I'm more likely to remember to leave it in and not color over it. So for no line coloring, so the trick is for the lines in the stamp, see those that are colored in with jellyfish ink, you want to use your darkest marker that you're going to use to color the image to fill in those lines, and that will help to maintain the definition of the shape as you're coloring. Otherwise, it can get a little bit confusing and a little bit frustrating if you start coloring over the lines and then you don't remember where the definition is supposed to be. So that's kind of like a fun first step that I like to do when I do no line coloring, is just color in or trace over the stamped image with whatever darkest color of marker I'm going to use. And then after you get comfortable with that approach, you can vary it and you know, maybe you'll only use your darkest marker on certain parts and then your mid-tone on other parts. But to start, it's kind of a good way just to, you know, get into the groove of no line coloring to make it easy and enjoyable in the beginning. So for the pumpkins, I'm using some golden shades and some brown shades. And then when I think I need to brighten the pumpkin up with a little orangey tone, then I will glaze over it with a more orangey color. So one thing I found with pumpkins is that if you just go right in right away with your oranges, the pumpkins will look kind of like cartoonish and unnatural looking. And in this scene, we want really natural looking pumpkins. So that's why I'm using these more golden tones. So the colors that I'm using is Y11 for that highlight shade, and see, this is where I'm doing the glazing. I do the glazing at the end with whatever the most orangey tone I'm going to use. And the orangey tones I'm using for glazing are YR12 and YR15 and even a little Y21. And then the colors that I'm using to add the shading and the contouring to the pumpkins is YR24, YR27, and then E99, which all work really, really well together. And then for the stems, I'm going to use some yellow greens, and I'm using shades from YG91 to YG99. I find that green shade works really, really good with the tone of these pumpkins. Again, like another area where your pumpkins can look like kind of cartoonish or unnatural is if you use too bright of a green. So using like a G, I don't know, like anywhere from G00 all the way up into the G40s, that might look a little bit too bright and unnatural. And the same with the YGs, like if you use like a YG03, anywhere up to like a YG13, it can look a little bit too green and garish. So I like these darker yellow green tones. So I'll either use YG91 to 99, or sometimes I may use a combination of YG03, YG17, and then YG67. And if I need to make it a little bit more muted, I might add some like YG95 as well. So just another little color tip there if you're coloring autumn pumpkins. These colors also work really, really excellently for leaves. So when you want to color in your leaves, like these golden shades are great for yellowish or golden leaves. And these yellow green shades in the YG91 to 99 are great shades for autumn leaves that are just turning. Another good color combination to add in for leaves is R56 and R59. If you want to add like a reddish or magenta-ish combination into your leaves. And then I'll also show you a yellow combination once we get up to the leaves at top. And generally there I like Y11, Y15, Y18, sometimes Y38, and then blending them out with some Y24 or Y27. Okay, so getting back to the pumpkins. So for these three pumpkins, I used pretty much the same colors, but I just used a different technique to color them in. For that top pumpkin, I kind of followed the lines in the stamped image. For that pumpkin on the lower right, I tried to focus the shading on the bottom part of the pumpkin. And then for this little guy on the left-hand side, I'm trying to put lots of little ridges in the pumpkin. And the way to do that is to just have a dark strip of color, right next to a very light strip of color, and then that will give the illusion of there being like little ridges in the pumpkin, because the areas that are dark will recede from the image, and then the areas that are light will kind of pop out, so it'll make it look like it's more of a convex shape. So that's one way to think of it. For the little stems on the pumpkin, I use some E47 there, and I just traced along with the stamped shape to make my little stems. If you have a thinner marker, you could use like a Copic multi-liner as well in sepia if you wanted to draw your stem on that way, or actually any dark brown marker that you have that's skinny if you're not comfortable using the brush tip of the Copic, because you do have to have kind of a light touch to get that thin of a line there. And if your tips are a little worn on the Copics, you might not be able to do that. But if you have a fresh tip, it should work just fine. For the leaves, I'm using YG 91 to 99 for that little top row of leaves. And then for this guy, we are going to use some yellowish tone, so we're using Y26. And I'm just playing here. The thought that I had was I wanted to make it look like a leaf that was changing color. So like it's tipped with a little bit of a magenta color, and then maybe it goes into a golden color, and then at the very edge it's kind of a dark brown. And I'm just playing around until I get a combination that I like. This is a part of the coloring where I urge you just, have fun and just play around a little bit. So I'm starting there with a green towards the bottom, and then we'll blend it out to like a magenta or a yellow first, and then a magenta. And then we'll top it off with like a brownish shade. And it might look a little bit dopey at first, or you might have to work on the blending, but just have fun, work on your blending until you get it to a point where it looks good to you. You can add in the little veins like I did there. And if there's anything you don't like, you can just color over it with a darker marker like I'm kind of doing there. And at that point, I think I like the way that leaf looks. For this one, we're going to make a little golden leaf, so I'm going to color it in with Y15 and then use some E55 for the brown shade, and then some Y26 towards the top, and then add a little E35 to the bottom, add a little orange with that YR12, and then back with the Y15. Again, just playing here. There's no real method. I was just trying to get some nice multicolored leaves with the different colors that I was working with. For our little acorn, we're not going to use it in our final image, but I'll show you how to color it anyway. So I drew in the little hatch marks on the top of the acorn with some E47, filled it in with E44 and E43 in the very center. And then for the acorn part, the nut part, we'll fill it in with some E31 and then E55 and E35 to kind of darken it up a little bit. And then that is going to do it for our little acorn. I just left a little highlight on the corner there. And then for our final little stray leaf, I'm just using some YG95, YG93, and a little YG99 on the edge. And then YG97. I guess I'm using all the YGs on that little leaf. And I've die cut all of the images out, and this is what they look like in the end. They're so cute. I went and stamped and die cut another set of these images as well, because I needed them to fill in our slimline scene here. I'm using a stamp from the Autumn Blessings stamp set that says, "Hey there, pumpkin." And I'm just embossing that with some white embossing powder. Be sure to make sure that your inked background is dry before you start this process. Otherwise, the embossing powder will kind of stick where you don't want it, like it did over there. But I just brushed it off and it was okay. So our sentiment is going to say, "Hey there, pumpkin, happy fall." And then I'm just going to glue on our little grassy hills. I'm only applying the adhesive to the very bottom of the die cut because we're going to tuck in the little pumpkins in between the layers so that this way I'm not gluing the pumpkins in, I'm just placing them. And then by doing this, you can actually, when you send the card to a recipient, they can actually pick the little pumpkins out of the pumpkin patch and then like play with them. One thought I had after I finished this was that it would have been cool to put sticker backs on the pumpkins, and then if you gave this card to a child, then they would have like a whole bunch of little pumpkin stickers that they could you know, put on their school books or in their little scrapbooks or wherever it is that they would like to add their stickers. Maybe like add it on their shirt as a little fun little pin for a day. And now I'm just going to add around the little leaves, and the leaves I did glue them down with some tape runner adhesive. It's just the pumpkins that I kind of let sit in between the layers there. And so now we have this lovely fall scene. We have all of our pumpkins that are ripe and ready to be picked out of the patch, and then we have our little leaves blowing in the background. I can actually feel the autumn air like hitting my skin as I am putting this card together. So I hope you enjoyed this video, everyone. I hope you give this card a try. It's so much fun, and I think that this would be a great card to give to a special child in your life. They could have so much fun picking out the pumpkins and then maybe putting the pumpkins back in. Maybe you could tell your child a story like the Peanuts story, It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and let them play with the card while you read them the story. Lots of fun ways to make the most of this card. All right, thanks so much. I will see you again soon in another video. Have a great day, everyone.